Hey everyone, welcome back to the Quacking Pancakes YouTube channel. I'm Kory, and this is my review for Spider-Man No Way Home, spoilers included. If you haven't seen the film or my spoiler-free review where I cover my background and initial impressions of the film, you can find that video in the description below. Again, if you haven't seen No Way Home yet, I would recommend that you stop the video right here to save yourself from any spoilers. Otherwise, let's get into it. So something I think we gotta just jump straight into is talking about the live-action Spider-Verse. My theater, and I'm assuming every theater, went absolutely bananas when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man showed up, and even crazier when Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man showed up a few moments later. As I mentioned in the first video, I absolutely love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. That might be my favorite portrayal of a superhero in any film, but I never really had a soft spot for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Seeing him in this movie, though, definitely felt like seeing an old friend for the first time in a while. It was definitely very welcome. And I think this comes from the fact that most everyone knows Andrew Garfield is a really brilliant actor, and I think his faults as Spider-Man come from just the overall direction of the movies. But to be completely honest, as someone who never really cared for those movies, I felt that his Spider-Man portrayal stole the show. You know, having taken a break from the character for so long, I think anyone who's loyal to that particular franchise has been wondering what's been going on with him. He brings this sense of vulnerability that I think is missing with the other two, where even though they all struggle with their personal lives, this one is clearly damaged on the inside. He suffers from a lot of PTSD over losing Gwen Stacy in the second film, and even though I think he portrays Spider-Man very well in terms of the humor and the quick thinking, there's definitely a lot going on there under the mask. Peter 3, as he's later called, is what Tom Holland's Spider-Man is on track to become, and neither Peter 3 or Peter 2, who's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, wants that to happen. Which, I love how much this mirrors into the Spider-Verse, where Miles Morales is clearly an inexperienced Spider-Man, and the only one who can help him is a depressed but still top-notch Spider-Man from a different reality. In this case, I believe that it's both of the older counterparts, but I think there's a lot to be enjoyed there with the rage that Andrew Garfield's character is hiding beneath him, where he says he doesn't really pull his punches anymore. This is a broken Spider-Man who's almost too far gone, and he's only doing the right thing at this point because of the guilt that he still carries with him. On the other hand, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is still the OG. Everyone knows that. He's very emotionally mature, and I just love how experienced he is and how they made sure to show that years later after his franchise ended. They account for the fact that his body's a lot older, like how his back needs to be popped before they go into their final battle. Yet like Jake Johnson's Spider-Man in Into the Spider-Verse, where he's old and kind of settled into his role, he still knows all the tricks and how to make the most out of any situation. In the end, I think he's still the most experienced and aware Spider-Man, but obviously his potential is maxed out, especially when you compare him to someone like Tom Holland. One of my favorite scenes is when Maguire and Garfield meet for the first time and they have a little bit of a standoff where Maguire incapacitates Garfield's web shooters. You know, I leaned into my friend at that moment and I said, wow, he's still got it. He's still the best. He may be a lot older now, but he still knows exactly what he's doing and is fully capable of being one step ahead of both his younger counterparts and the villains in the movie. Ultimately, though, this is not his movie. You know, his franchise is come and gone. I think that his role in the film is meant to serve as a mentor and moral compass for not just Tom Holland, but Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man as well. The latter is a character who's taken a lot of flack on and off the screen, and, you know, I think they kind of broke the fourth wall in letting us know that it wasn't his fault. Peter 2 is constantly assuring Peter 3 that, you know, he's a great Spider-Man and he should acknowledge how amazing he is and just be proud of what he's accomplished so far in his life. He's also kind of hinted that, you know, someday he'll find his MJ after Gwen, and I think that's just really sweet of him to do that. There's just a lot of wisdom that I think is going on there that's missing with the other counterparts because, like I said before, Maguire was always an emotionally mature Spider-Man. You especially see this in the end where Peter 1 is trying to kill the Green Goblin with his own glider, but Peter 2 is the one who stops him and catches the glider. Speaking of that scene though, my entire theater went crazy when he got stabbed, and I was like so destroyed when I saw it happen. Like, I didn't think they would kill him off that easily, and I'm glad that they didn't. Do I think it would have worked? Yes, I think it would have served the same purpose as killing off Aunt May. It would have been something like his death had meaning. It was meant to say, you're better than this, and I hope that my sacrifice shows you that you can recover from all of the anger and rage that you're feeling. I think it would have only added on to Peter 1's character development. That being said though, I'm glad they didn't, not just as a Tobey fan, but I think it also, you know, is a fan service to say that, he was able to go back to his universe and continue being Spider-Man. We don't know what villains he has next or what the deeper aspects of his relationship with Mary Jane is, but in the same way that this movie has an open ending, those two counterparts have enough closure for us to, continue the fandom however else we want to. That being said, I'm glad they didn't, because in the same way that this movie has an open ending, you get to assume that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man goes back to his universe and continues his endless stream of adventures. I have my doubts that Tobey will ever come back as much as I'd like him to, but I think they did a really great job in providing closure and fan service towards people who really love that franchise. As for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, I would honestly love if they gave him a second chance and reintroduced him to the MCU. I think this movie alone shows that great writing can help a great actor overcome the flack and criticism that he's received in the past. He definitely redeemed himself from a plot perspective where he saved MJ in the same way that he wasn't able to save Gwen. Every time Andrew Garfield cries in the movie, whether it's trying to talk to Peter 1 or saving MJ, and you can see how much that means to him. It just feels so genuine, and you feel his pain in the movie. That's just really top-notch acting. As a superhero actor outside of the film, I'd also really love to see him interact with Tom Hardy's Venom in the Sony universe. Whether that happens, who knows, but I've heard some people speculating that he could possibly return in Secret Wars whenever that happens, and I think that would definitely be welcome. Okay, so we also got to give a lot of credits to the villains as well. The way that they masked and marketed this film, you would have thought that Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus would have been the main antagonist. I absolutely loved the plot twist where he decided to fight for the heroes after being cured of all the voices in his head. At the end of Spider-Man 2, he came to the same decision just purely based off the fact that knowledge is a gift meant to be used for the good of mankind, but the fact that this character who has been tormented for so long was able to experience such relief and without any hesitation wanted to help Peter 1 restore everyone else to their original selves just truly shows that Doc Ock was never meant to be a bad guy. That scene between him and Maguire where they were able to briefly catch up and have a moment together was just also extremely wholesome and great to see as a longtime fan. Jamie Foxx also pulled off a very admirable performance where his character provided a lot of funny one-liners and swag to the villain's roll call. I definitely like the more realistic redesign and the fact that there's a lot of empathy towards his character, especially considering his self-esteem issues stemming from Garfield's universe. The villain who absolutely stole the show, though, is Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. Everyone and their mom's husband already knows that Willem Dafoe has enough acting chops to compensate for a room full of actors, but he was just ridiculously good in this movie. When he showed up, he's masked as the Green Goblin, and it's just very briefly, but the next time we see him, he's Norman Osborn. He's really scared and alone in this new world he's found himself in. He even goes ahead and smashes the mask in front of him. When we find him at the shelter with Aunt May, I think, our hearts really do go out to him, but at the same time, we're very cautious. We don't know when he's going to snap back into his goblin persona. That being said, I really enjoyed the fan service with the Raimi memes thrown in where he says, I'm something of a scientist myself, or where Tobey Maguire mentions his back. It's nothing huge, but it's still really admirable that they decided to do that. My favorite scene with the Green Goblin, however, takes place in Happy's condo when he snaps back into his evil persona. And when I say evil, I mean he is straight up diabolical. All this character cares about, not to be cliche, but he only wants to see the world burn. Everyone else kind of has their own agenda. Sandman wants to get home. Electro doesn't want to be a loser again. Doc Ock just wants to build his machine. The Green Goblin is just extremely sinister and a sadist. All he cares about is seeing Spider-Man suffer. And I think that's an aspect that's been missing from all of the films between 2002 and this one. The first fight scene with him was absolutely perfect. It's raw and it's violent, and you can see that Tom Holland's Spider-Man has finally met his one-on-one match in terms of just power and combat ability. The beating that he ended up taking was just so brutal, and his Spider-Man was pushed to the absolute limit. There's this scene there where Spider-Man's, standing on top of him, and he's just raining down punches, and all that the Goblin is doing is just laughing and mocking him the whole time. It's very reminiscent of Heath Ledger's Joker telling Batman that there's nothing he can do with all his strength. There's nothing he can do to threaten him. He's already beaten him mentally. For me, Dafoe was the best part of the movie, and that's why he'll go down as not just a great villain in a superhero movie, but one of the best movie villains of all time. So what about the rest of the film? Obviously, the main plotline comes from Peter trying to get his friends back into MIT, and in the end they're admitted while he drops out of high school and becomes unknown to them. I'm honestly happy with this ending for a lot of reasons, and I think you could equate it to the second and third Raimi films where it's signaling a new beginning for the character. He's not in high school anymore, he's probably going to go after some kind of day job that may or may not be related to photography, but most importantly, he's finally a standalone superhero like his counterparts, who I'm sure will experience tons of growing pains as he adjusts to regular adult life. He might go down the path of fighting smaller thugs or organized crime like Daredevil, who I expect him to meet sometime in the future, but I also wouldn't count him out from returning to the Avengers. Aunt May's death was actually pretty shocking to me though. I had heard that an important character would be killed off, so I assumed that it'd either be her or Tobey's Spider-Man had he appeared. But then when she got hit by the glider, she wasn't impaled like how you would expect her to be, She got up and spoke for a little bit before collapsing and dying, so there was a little bit of a push-pull there and I wasn't sure if they'd be able to pull the trigger on that. As sad as it was though, I can understand why they finally decided to do it. Peter in this franchise has had a lot of hand-holding going on between both her, Happy Hogan, Iron Man, the rest of the Avengers, and a lot of them have been support systems to help him pick up the pieces whenever something's gone horribly wrong. Obviously he needs this as a kid, but I don't know how much he grows as a superhero with all of this added comfortability around him. There's a scene where the older Spider-Men talk about how they have no idea what it's like to work on a team, but Tom Holland's Spider-Man does, and he even brags a little bit that he was on the Avengers, which they don't even know what that is because it's always just been them and their universe. I think it'll be extremely interesting to see what it's like for Tom Holland's character to not have a man in the chair or the team of superheroes that he can rely on for backup at any given moment. The way the movie ended implied to me that he's ready to go solo and he's not afraid to take those risks by himself anymore. I don't know if MJ or Ned will return in future films, but I think the fact that Peter let them go finally speaks volumes about his character development. He finally made a decision that really had nothing to do with his personal gain. It was more about he didn't want them to be a part of his life anymore as Spider-Man because of how dangerous it is. For once, he finally made a sacrifice that didn't let him get what he wanted, but it also allowed him the opportunity to grow up and start life on his own terms, which I'm excited to see. I found a lot of comfort in seeing him so excited about his new apartment, and he's setting up the police precincts on his phone, and he's got that last shot of him in the classic suit, which I think is icing on the cake. That to me says that even though Tobey Maguire will always be my favorite, and Andrew Garfield has his own set of pros to support his case, this is the true canonical Spider-Man. This is the one that's been set up to be the most successful and beloved iteration of the character that we could possibly want in a movie. The handmade costume says it all. It's pulled straight from the comics and it's meant to symbolize that he is the comic book Spider-Man. When we compare it to something like the Stark suits, those personally never fit the narrative to me because they were given to him by Iron Man. And even though the Raimi and Webb suits were homemade, those offer their own twist towards the costumes and the franchises. This Spider-Man has finally gotten to where he needed to be in life and where we as fans wanted him to finally be after 3 films together. That's why even though they never show us a new suit straight on, it leaves things open-ended enough for us to dream of all the new adventures that's going to come with it. Like I mentioned before, this is probably my favorite Spider-Man movie ever made for a wide variety of reasons. All of these opinions and evaluations are entirely my own, but in case you feel differently about something, I'd love if you left a comment so that way I could see your perspective as well. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and subscribe, and there will definitely be more to come in the future. Again, my name is Kory, and I hope you have a great day. See ya!